Wish he was our only son, Dad said about my brother. 5 years later, I bought their house. They saw me on TV as a CEO. Mom cried, "We miss you." I hung up. I wasn't meant to be home so early. I had swapped shifts with one of the other guys at the warehouse, Miguel, I believe, since he needed to pick up his kid. So, instead of the normal 7, I clocked out at 2:15 and decided to surprise my parents by picking up groceries on the way home. Just the essentials: milk, eggs, and frozen pizza for dinner. I did not expect a celebration or even a thank you. That has never worked in our house, but I thought they may appreciate it. Perhaps that would be one of those minor details that got me a hey. Thank you, Dean. That's my name, Dean. I was 28 at the time, and I was still living at home. And believe me, I get how that sounds. I was not proud of it, but it was useful. I was paying off some college debt, saving for a used car that didn't sputter on hills, and attempting to save enough money to move out without plunging into a black hole of rent and ramen. The deal was that I pay $350 each month, clean up after myself, and stay out of the way. The last part was the unstated clause. My brother Lucas, on the other hand, was golden. He's 2 years younger than me, 26, charming, and always knew what to say at the appropriate time. He was the type of student that professors admired in high school, even though he turned in his essays late, the sort who can slam his automobile into a fence and get the neighbor to apologize for putting the fence up. You know the type. To be honest, I did not despise him for it. I used to admire it. I figured if I stayed near enough, some of that shine may rub off on me. But, with time, I began to notice the trend. Every time I got a B+, he earned an A-. When I received a warehouse promotion, he was unexpectedly offered a higher-paying internship through one of Dad's acquaintances. When I paid off my first student loan installment, Mom hardly glanced at the receipt I taped to the fridge. Meanwhile, Lucas remembered to put his clothing in the hamper, so they threw him a celebratory meal. Okay, not literally, but you get the idea. Still, I told myself I was overreacting, that it was just natural favoritism that occurs when one child is easier to brag about than another. I kept my head down, worked, cleaned, paid the rent, and bit my tongue. That afternoon, I entered through the rear door, arms full of grocery bags. The home was abnormally silent. There's no TV or Lucas, just the quiet hum of voices in the kitchen. I figured they hadn't heard me enter. Then I heard my father's voice. I sometimes wish Lucas was our only child. I came to a halt and halted in the hallway, like if a ghost was haunting the laminate flooring. My stomach fell, but part of me, a naive, hopeful shard, felt he was joking and that there would be a punchline. Something like, life would be dull, right? But then Mom spoke. I know what you mean, she answered casually. It is just easier. He's not as emotionally needy or dramatic. They then chuckled. Not just a chuckle, but a genuine laugh. The kind that fills a room and bounces off its walls. I stood for 4 minutes. I counted. I stood there, grasping the grocery bags, till the plastic cut into my fingers and the eggs sweated through the carton. And then I turned silently, as if I had never entered at all. I opened the door, went back into the sunlight, and walked out silently. It took them 4 months to notice I was gone. I did not bang any doors. I did not compose a theatrical note. I did not post anything online or leave a paper trail. I just disappeared. I took out the remaining $275 from my checking account. I used it to purchase a one-way bus ticket to a city 2.5 hours away, where my college friend Caleb lived. He owes me a favor. We hadn't spoken in months, but when I called to ask if I might stay on his couch for a while, he didn't hesitate. Said, "Yeah, come through." I told him I needed to start over. I didn't tell him why. The first couple of nights were hard. I felt like a ghost. I kept checking my phone, as if I was waiting for a text that said, "Where are you?" Or, "Is everything all right?" There's nothing. Lucas sent a group chat message about a new whiskey he was testing, and Mom forwarded a meme about cats who dislike Mondays. Not a word about me. Caleb's flat was small and smelled faintly of old clothes, but it was warm, and he didn't ask questions. He worked nights for a security agency, so I had the home to myself throughout the day. I began taking up odd jobs. Unloading warehouses, delivering groceries, and working as a temporary storage facility employee. It wasn't flashy, but it was enough to keep me fed and pay the rent. I opened a savings account at a different bank and signed up for a new phone plan. I rebuilt my life one brick at a time, in complete silence. And, strangely, I did not feel sorry. Not at first. I felt hollow, like if my emotional limbs had been cut and I hadn't realized it. I kept expecting grief to strike and panic to set in, but it didn't, not until one night, about 1:40 a.m. When Caleb arrived home, he found me sitting on the kitchen floor with the fridge door open, eating peanut butter with a spoon, and crying so hard I couldn't breathe. I believe it was the peanut butter that caused it. My mother used to buy the exact same brand, Crunchy Gold. It was always stored on the third shelf. Seeing it again shattered something within me. I told Caleb everything that night, from the hallway incident to the 4-minute wait and the sound of my parents laughing. He didn't say anything at first, only sat next to me and let me speak. He got up, prepared coffee, and said, "You're not going back there ever." I nodded. I already knew that. Still, I wondered how long it would take them to discover I was gone. 1 month? 1 month? It turns out it took 4 months. And when they did finally contact out, it wasn't even over the phone. It was a group email. Subject line, family check-in. I opened it, my pulse hammering, hoping to see some indication of worry or question about my well-being. But, no, it was Mom, inquiring whether anyone had plans for Thanksgiving. She listed who was bringing what, asked Lucas whether his new girlfriend was coming, and ended with a passive line. "Dean, please let us know if you're around." If I was present, it would be as if I had just gone for a walk and become sidetracked. That was when the void solidified into something else. Not quite angry. Not yet, but the cold clarity that comes with truly accepting someone for who they are. I did not respond, but I began planning. Not only how to keep away, but also how to ensure they never forgot that moment in the kitchen. That chuckle, that sentence, that option. And that's when things really started to change. I did not respond to the Thanksgiving email. I did not send a text. I didn't even check the follow-up email, which arrived 10 days later with the subject line urgent cranberry sauce or no, but I saw it. I read every communication they sent because I couldn't bring myself to block them. Not yet. I wanted to know how long they pretended I wasn't missing. Thanksgiving has come and gone. I spent it in a diner with Caleb and some of his pals. We all chipped in and ordered the pathetic little turkey dinner special they were giving. We laughed despite slices of desiccated turkey, canned mashed potatoes, and green beans as limp as straws. We talked about ridiculous stuff. I didn't feel like a ghost that night, and no one questioned why I wasn't with my family. 10 days later, Lucas texted me for the first time since my disappearance. "Hello, dude, you okay?" That was it. No context, no follow-up. I stared at it for an hour before deleting it. Not responding, not blocking, only deleting. Then came Christmas, the big exam. I anticipated to receive a call by then, perhaps even a guilt trip voicemail. But, nah. Another group email. Christmas meal plans, complete with a Google Sheets link to see who is bringing what. I was not even included in the spreadsheet. Lucas was ready for the ham. Aunt Lorraine had pie. Mom had mashed potatoes and a festive atmosphere. Dad had a drink. Dean was invisible. That's when it struck me. This was not an oversight. This was not an error. This was their kind of quiet agreement. They pretended I had relocated for work or that I was away doing something else. They could just vacuum seal and store me somewhere, similar to a sun-shaped vacuum. So I made my selection. If they were going to remove me, I'd make it impossible for them to ignore. I began working double shifts. I saved every penny I could. I stopped purchasing anything I didn't absolutely need. Caleb helped me print flyers for freelance handyman services, furniture assembly, TV mounting, and basic repairs. I distributed them throughout the community and taped one to each laundry bulletin board within a 12-mile radius. The situation gradually improved. My savings increased. I wasn't simply surviving anymore. I was stacking cash. For the first time in years, I felt in control, like my future belonged to me. Meanwhile, the texts from home were scarce. January, "I hope you are staying warm." February, Dad says, "Hi, Lucas got a new car." March, Grandma is approaching her 82nd birthday. "Are you coming?" I ignored them until April. That's when I received the voicemail. My phone rang while I was working on a leaking faucet at the home of a retired couple. "I saw your missed call, Mom." I rolled my eyes and pushed the phone back into my pocket. But later that night, something prompted me to check the message. Her voice seemed unsteady, not sad, just off. "Hello, Dean. I hope you're doing well. We have not heard from you. I know things have been weird. Maybe we said something incorrect, but we still love you, okay? We actually do. Just let us know you're okay." There was a break at the conclusion, around 5 seconds, before the message ended. She seemed to be trying to come up with something additional to say but couldn't. I almost broke. Almost. But then I remembered that afternoon and how the plastic bags bit into my fingertips. Their laughing echoed down the hall. And suddenly, that voicemail felt theatrical, as if an actor had missed her cue. I did not respond, not even when Lucas texted me 3 days later. "You're being dramatic. Please come home already." That was impressive coming from him. Especially because, while all of this was going on, I began hearing from old neighbors and friends back home. Not directly, but via social media posts shared by Caleb's cousin, who still resided in our town. Things like Lucas finally getting that promotion, or Lucas and Dad going to the golf course together. Family tradition. Family tradition. I hadn't been invited on a family outing in years. Not since I was 22 and began questioning why I was constantly paying my own bills while Lucas had a seemingly endless financial account. And now, at 28, I was essentially a ghost in their timeline. Then came the true gut hit. It was Saturday and rainy. I remember because I had just returned from unclogging someone's gutter and my hoodie was wet through. I was scrolling through Instagram when I noticed it. This is a post from my cousin Sophie. She tagged both my parents and Lucas. The snapshot was a large group shot at a restaurant, everybody dressed up. The caption said, "So proud of Lucas's engagement. Beautiful meal with the family. Ring. Engagement. Dinner with the family." I zoomed in. Sure enough, there they were. Mom, Dad, Uncle Mark, Aunt Lorraine, Lucas's fiancée, a blonde girl I'd never met before, and a table full of happy people. All of them. Every single extended family member that ever attended our Christmas and picnics. And I am nowhere, not even mentioned. I put down my phone. I went outside. I did not even grab a jacket. I just walked until I lost feeling in my fingers, until the drizzle poured into my flesh, numbing my face. Until my lungs ached from the cold. That was the breaking moment. This is not the kitchen conversation, not the silence, not the 4 months spent pretending I didn't exist. It was that photo and that caption. They were creating a life, a family, and a future, and I was not a part of it. Not even a footnote. That night, I did not cry. I did not anger. I did not shout into the void. I wrote a letter to myself rather than to them. It was 6 pages long. I wrote it all in one session. By hand. I outlined everything they had ever said. Every time, they dismissed me. Every time Lucas was commended for breathing, I was chastised for attempting. I wrote everything, and then I destroyed everything. Not for symbolism, but to stay warm while the space heater sputtered in the corner. And then I devised a fresh idea, not only to move on, but to advance. To create something so impenetrable, so unmistakable, that when they recognized what they had done, it was too late. The door would be closed, secured, and buried in concrete. And just when I thought the universe was going to give me a break, it threw me another curveball. Lucas called, not texted or emailed. He did call. It was Tuesday. I remember because I was midway through cooking boxed mac and cheese when the screen turned on. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Dean replied, his voice light and nonchalant, as if nothing had happened. "Yes," I said flat. "Hey, man, it has been a long time since we spoke." "Yes," he laughed awkwardly. "So, I have some major news." I said nothing. "I am getting married," he continued, "in July. We have decided to go to the beach. Mom and Dad are assisting out. It's going to be massive. Like, everyone is coming." I looked at the saucepan of boiling noodles. "Do you want me to come?" I said, not a question. "Okay, yeah, you are my brother." I waited. He said nothing else, so I asked why now. He paused. "Look, Mom has been rather upset. You know how she is. Emotional. She wants the entire family present." "Ah, yeah. And Dad is trying to be cool about it, but he misses you, man." I nearly laughed. "Almost. Anyway," he carried on. "We believed this would be a good opportunity to eliminate whatever craziness was going on." "Squash," I repeated. "Yeah. You know, bury the hatchet." There was a prolonged hush. "Dean," he mentioned. I inhaled slowly and then exhaled. I said, "I'll think about it," because I knew they hadn't changed. They were not sorry. They only wanted a lovely wedding shot. And that was the greatest betrayal yet. I didn't attend the wedding. I never said no. After that call, I let the days pass, one by one, until July arrived and the beach wedding was over. There was no RSVP, message, apology, or guilt, just nothing. And amid the silence, I expected to feel something. Regret, perhaps, or humiliation, a knot in my stomach for not being the bigger person. But I did not. I had a peculiar sense of tranquility. A numb, Frigid tranquility, but peace nonetheless. I felt as if I had finally stopped picking at a wound and let it to heal. Then followed the crash, not the dramatic type. No job loss, no betrayal by a friend, no medical emergency, just the gradual type, the kind that seeps into your bones in the silence, after you've left everything behind. The kind that develops when you're alone for too long and your mind begins to play tricks, whispering that maybe you were the problem, that maybe they were right, that if your own parents didn't miss you, maybe you weren't worth missing at all. I stopped going out as often. I began turning down handyman projects. I told Caleb I was exhausted, which wasn't a lie, but it wasn't entirely accurate either. I spent more and more time on the couch, eating takeout and watching people on YouTube improve their lives while my own stalled. Caleb was patient, but not clueless. "You've got to get up, man," he said one night, standing in the doorway with a plastic fork and a half-eaten container of lo mein. "You've been in that hoodie for 5 days. I didn't respond. I could not. I just stared at the carpet, as if it had secrets to reveal. "You're not them," he said. "Do you know that?" I nodded, but it did not stick. "Not really." He sighed, shook his head, and walked off. That night, I finally looked in the mirror. More than just a glance. I looked. I was pale. My hair was a mess. I had that sunken look around my eyes, which is caused by sleeping too much rather than not enough. My hoodie was stiff with grease stains and dried ketchup. I appeared to have come to a stop. That was the bottom. Not a moment, not an event, but the realization that I had vanished from my own life. The following morning, I showered. It sounded small, but it felt enormous. I washed the hoodie twice and hung it to dry on the balcony like a battle flag. I shaved, trimmed my nails, and had an actual breakfast of eggs rather than chips or cereal. Real eggs. And then I opened my notebook, that battered spiral notebook where I kept lists of every skill I possessed, every business idea I'd ever had, and every dream I'd put off because I was too busy trying to be the kind of son who might earn a "we're proud of you." And I turned to the page titled "Someday." At the top of that page were the words, "Own something real, something mine, something they can't take or ignore." It struck me like a punch. I didn't just want to avoid my parents. I wanted to create something that they couldn't deny. So I chose the idea that I had circled 3 times: custom woodworking and repairs. It sounded simple, but I had a vision, making things rather than just fixing them. Handmade furniture, home improvements, wood accents, personalized shelving, all the things I used to help my grandfather build in his garage before he died. Stuff that lasted. I didn't have the money to rent a shop, but I did have 2 hands, a few tools, and enough money saved to complete one solid project. So I made a bench, sanded it smooth, burned a pattern into the seat with an old wood burner I found on Facebook Marketplace, stained and sealed it, and posted it online with the caption "Handmade. Custom. One of one." It sold in 2 days for just $180, but it felt like winning the lottery. So I created a second one. This time, it's a coffee table. 10 days later, someone messaged me, asking if I could do a complete set, including table, chairs, and shelves. I did not sleep that night. I kept thinking that they wanted more. They want something I made. That marked the beginning of Second Grain. The name came from a dumb conversation with Caleb about how wood has a first grain, which you can see right away, and then a second grain, which is deeper, more subtle, and only visible when the light hits it just right. "You're the second grain," he explained. They never saw it, but it was always present. I registered the company name, created a basic website, and began doing jobs on weekends while still taking on handyman work during the week. It was hard. I was always tired, but I was no longer depressed. And the best part? Every sale, client, and custom order was mine. It wasn't handed to me, nor did I get it because someone called or pulled a string. I deserved it. Dean, the kid who stood in a hallway listening to his parents laugh about how life would be better without him. That laugh echoed less and less each day, especially when I opened my email one night and found this. Subject: custom table as a wedding gift. Message: hello. I found your website through a friend. Your work is beautiful. I was wondering if you did custom engraving. My fiancé and I are getting married this fall, and we would love to have a custom gift table with our initials and date. Please let me know if you are available. Signed, Madeline Brooks. I stared at the screen. Madeline was Lucas's fiancé. She didn't know who I was. She must have found my website through a friend or a reshared post. However, the email footer contained their name and wedding date. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. I did not respond right away. Instead, I took a walk around the park, past the quiet tree-lined streets, allowing the wind to carry away the last of my hesitation. Because this was the first time I could reach back across the line they had drawn. Not with rage, not with shouting, but with evidence. Proof that I had value, had evolved into something, and had not vanished. I evolved. However, I knew that if I said yes, I would not do it for them. Not for Lucas, not for Mom, not even to make a point. I would do it for myself. To remind myself that I could be the type of man who shows up when it counts, even if no one else does. I got home, sat down, and said, "Hello, Madeline. Yes, I do custom engraving and would be honored to help you create something special for your wedding. Congratulations to you both. Let's talk design. No signature, no indication of my identity, just a name and a product." And when I clicked send, I didn't feel petty. I felt powerful. Because they may have forgotten me, but the world has not, and I am only getting started. I didn't tell Madeline who I am. Not in the email, invoice, or final delivery note. I kept it professional, warm, polite, and slightly detached. I let her be another client, another name on the spreadsheet I'd created to track orders and shipments. However, the irony was not lost on me. She was marrying my brother, the golden boy, the focal point of every dinner table and photo frame. The same guy who once asked if I could come by and fix the garbage disposal a week after I moved out, as if nothing had changed. And now she wanted me to make a centerpiece for their wedding gift table. That would have been sufficient for most people. Enough irony and closure. But the longer I worked on the piece, the smoother the engravings became. The more the walnut gleamed under the finish, the more a thought raced through my mind like a heartbeat. They still do not know who I am. It started small. I imagined delivering the piece in person and seeing Lucas' expression when he saw me. I imagined Mom and Dad hovering behind him, pretending not to look. I can imagine the silence, the discomfort, the stammered greetings, and the, "Oh, hey, wow, you look great." But imagination was not enough. I desired control. I desired precision. I did not want to cause a scene. I wanted to write the entire script and have them sit in the audience, eyes wide, hands shaking, with no idea what would happen next. So I got to work. First, I restructured Second Grain as an LLC. I had been operating as a sole proprietor, but now that orders were coming in steadily, it was time to go official. I filled out the paperwork, hired a part-time CPA, and established a business bank account. The logo evolved from a napkin sketch by Caleb to a clean, minimal brand that I used on everything, including boxes, invoices, and even a burn stamp for each completed piece. Next, I updated the website. I included testimonials and organized a digital portfolio. And this was important. I started a blog, not a diary. This was storytelling, with photos of my builds, stories behind them, and design insights buried between those entries. I also included the type of personal post that people scroll past without thinking. The table that began it all. That is what I called it. I discussed my first major commission, which was a custom wedding table engraved with initials and a fall date. I didn't mention any names. I didn't post faces, but I made sure the details were specific enough that anyone in the family who happened to come across that page would think, "Wait a second, is that?" But they wouldn't be certain. And that was the point. Meanwhile, I accepted Madeline's payment and forwarded her design mock-ups. She chose one. I began carving. Days passed, orders continued, and then, about 18 days before the wedding, I received an unexpected call. "Mom." My finger hovered above the screen. I could have let it go to voicemail. I should have, but something compelled me to respond. "Hello." She did not speak for a single second. "Dean," she finally said softly, as if she didn't know it was me. "Yeah, hello." She paused again. "I saw your blog. The table post. Bingo." I remained quiet. "I didn't realize you were doing so well," she continued. "Your father and I had no idea." I could almost hear her trying to find the right words. She was not calling to apologize. She was calling because the illusion had broken. For years, they told themselves that I was just learning and finding my way, feeling a little lost. They now knew I had a plan, and it didn't involve them. "I am proud of you," she said. I smiled. "Thanks." Another pause. "Will you be attending the wedding?" There it was, the trap. I could have answered yes. I could have agreed to play the good son, the long-lost relative, or the forgiving brother, but I wasn't interested in being involved anymore. I wanted to be seen. So I said, "I believe I will drop off the table in person. I'd like to ensure it arrives safely." "Oh," she replied, surprised. "Well, that'd be lovely." "Beautiful, God." We hung up shortly thereafter. The subsequent 18 days were a blur of preparation. I finished the table, routed the edges, sealed the engraving, and added a hidden drawer on the underside, which I did not tell Madeline about. A small design flourish lined with felt where they could store keepsakes or notes. In that drawer, I kept a sealed envelope. No return address or signature. Just the words, "Read after the wedding." The envelope contained a single-page letter. It read, "You don't know me, not really, but you have heard of me. I am the one who disappeared. The one your fiancé's family will never bring up. And that is fine. You do not owe me anything. But this table was built by a version of me that they never saw. The person who did not vanish. The one who built himself out of silence. Congratulations on the wedding. I hope your marriage is based on truth, not performance. There's no rage or guilt trip, just facts." Caleb felt it was too subtle. He suggested dropping a grenade in their laps. "This is more like a quiet cough in the corner." But that was the beauty of it. It wasn't vengeance, not in the explosive sense. It was the emotional equivalent of walking past someone who used to dismiss you and seeing their eyes widen as they realize you've outgrown them. And just to make sure I got the point across, I made one last move. I contacted a friend of Caleb's who worked in local PR. She owed him a favor. I asked if she could get a small feature in one of those online lifestyle blogs that promote local makers and small businesses. She said yes. The article came out the day before the wedding. Second grain, how one local artisan turned pain into purpose. My face wasn't in it, but my story was lightly edited, sanitized. The blog described how I started after walking away from a toxic family dynamic and how I'd quietly built something on my own terms. The kicker, they included a photo of the wedding table front and center. Anyone in the family reading that article would know exactly who the table was for, but no one could say anything without admitting the truth, that I was the missing son, the one they laughed about, the one who walked away and built something better. So when I pulled into the venue that afternoon, box trailer hitched behind my borrowed pickup, I didn't feel nervous. I felt calm. I wore jeans and a black button down. Nothing flashy, no big entrance, just another vendor arriving to make a delivery. The parking attendant waved me through. Madeline greeted me with a huge smile. She was stunning in a silver silk dress with embroidered cuffs. "You must be Dean. Oh my God, the table is beautiful." "Thanks," I said, smiling. "I'm glad you like it. I had no idea you were local," she added. "It's perfect. Seriously." And then right behind her, Lucas. He froze when he saw me, like he'd seen a ghost with a hammer. But I didn't flinch. "Hey," I said, like it was nothing. He blinked. "You made this." I nodded. "Second grain. That's me." Madeline looked between us. "Wait, you two know each other?" I shrugged. "We've met." Lucas still hadn't spoken. "Anyway," I said, "congrats to you both. I left a little surprise under the table for after the honeymoon." Madeline lit up. "You're the sweetest." And with that, I walked away. No drama, no scene, just the look on Lucas's face, somewhere between awe and fear. And that, more than any speech, was the moment I knew. They finally saw me, and they couldn't unsee me. The wedding itself passed without incident. At least not the kind people whisper about during the reception or replay later in group chats. I didn't stay. I didn't linger. I didn't hover near the bar hoping for eye contact or closure. I delivered the table, exchanged polite words, and left before the ceremony even started. That was deliberate. Revenge, real revenge, isn't loud. It doesn't need witnesses in the moment. It needs time. It needs space. It needs people to sit with what they've ignored until it starts to itch. I went home, took a long shower, and slept for 9 straight hours. The kind of sleep you get when you finally finish something heavy and set it down for good. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It came in waves. The first wave hit 3 days later. Lucas called me. Not text, not voicemail, a call. I let it ring once, twice. On the third ring, I answered. "What?" I said, not angry, just flat. "What the hell was that?" he snapped, skipping every possible greeting. "The table?" I asked. "You liked it, right?" "This isn't funny," he said. Madeline found the letter. I leaned back on the couch. "Okay." She was upset. He continued, confused. She asked why no one ever talks about you. Why she didn't know I had a brother who built the centerpiece for our wedding. "That sounds uncomfortable," I said. "You embarrassed us." "No," I replied calmly. I told the truth quietly. "You embarrassed yourselves." He went silent. Then, "Mom's been crying." I nearly laughed. "Almost. About what?" I asked. She keeps saying she didn't know you felt that way. That you were hurting. That if she'd known. She didn't know, I interrupted. She heard me. Or she didn't. Either way, she chose what was easier. Lucas exhaled sharply. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I said. I did. He hung up on me. The second wave came from extended family. Aunt Lorraine sent me a long email. Not apologizing, just explaining. Explaining how hard parenting is, how no one is perfect, how sometimes things get said in private that aren't meant to be taken seriously. I replied with one sentence. Some things only matter because they're said in private. Uncle Mark tried humor. Sent me a message saying, guess we owe you a beer, kid. I didn't respond. My cousin Sophie, bless her, actually called. She didn't dance around it. I didn't know, she said. None of us did. They really messed this up. I know. I said that was enough. The third wave was the one that mattered. Mom and Dad asked to meet. Not right away. It took them almost 5 weeks. 5 weeks of awkward conversations with relatives. 5 weeks of sideways glances. 5 weeks of people asking, so where's Dean these days? 5 weeks of reading comments under the article about Second Grain that said things like, love seeing people succeed after cutting out toxic family. That word toxic followed them everywhere. We met at a neutral place, a quiet cafe halfway between my apartment and their house. I got there early, ordered coffee, sat with my back straight, and my hands relaxed on the table. I didn't rehearse anything. I did not need to. They arrived together, sat down like they were attending a meeting they hoped would end quickly. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Dad looked tired. We exchanged pleasantries, weather, traffic, the usual cowardly warm-up. Then Mom broke. I didn't mean it, she said. What you heard. It wasn't serious. I didn't argue. I just looked at her. Dad cleared his throat. We didn't know you were struggling. I nodded. That's the problem. They waited for years. I continued. I tried to earn space in this family. Not love. Just space to be seen. To be acknowledged. When I stopped trying, you didn't notice. When I left, you didn't notice. You only noticed when other people did. Mom's eyes filled with tears. That's not true. It is, I said gently. You didn't call because you missed me. You called because you saw the block. Dad opened his mouth. Closed it. I'm not here to punish you, I went on. I'm not here to yell. I'm here to tell you what's going to happen next. They leaned in, finally listening. I don't want a relationship, I said. Not right now. Maybe not ever. I don't hate you. I just don't trust you with my life anymore. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled it back. Not harshly, just firmly. I built something, I said, not a business, a self, and I won't hand it back to people who only value it when it looks good in public. Silence. Dad nodded slowly. So that's it. Yes, I said. That's it. They didn't fight me on it. That was the most telling part. We stood. They left. I stayed long enough to finish my coffee. The final wave came months later. Second Grain took off. Not overnight, not viral, just steady. Word of mouth. Repeat clients, commercial commissions. I hired a second worker, then a third, moved into a real shop with a roll-up door and my logo painted on the side. One afternoon, while reviewing invoices, I got an email from Madeline Brooks. She thanked me again for the table, said it was the only part of the wedding that felt grounded, real. She said the letter made her think, ask questions, have conversations she'd been avoiding. She didn't ask me to intervene, didn't ask me to fix anything. She just said, I'm glad you exist. That was enough. I never reconciled with my parents. Not fully. We exchanged the occasional polite message on birthdays. Nothing more. Lucas and I don't speak at all. And that's okay, because the revenge wasn't ruining their lives. It was refusing to keep shrinking mine. They laughed once in a kitchen, thinking they were alone. They weren't, and they never will be again. The last time I walked past my workshop at night, lights glowing inside, I caught my reflection in the glass. I didn't see the kid in the hallway anymore. I saw the man who walked back out the door and never needed to.